The fanfic title is What If Hinata Saved Naruto at age 9 and They Became the Dark Rulers of the World Part 3. Hello everyone, this is your friend and I am back with a new fanfic Part 3. I hope you enjoy this fanfic, and if you enjoy this, so don't forget to subscribe my channel. Now let's start the fanfic. Call dismissed. As everyone rushed out of the CL, Iruka waved me down. Naruto, may I have a word with you? I briefly glanced over to Sasuke and Hinata. Sasuke gave me a subtle nod. I knew he'd be on guard until we met up again later. I thought Hinata would be worried, but she simply sent me a sweet smile. I think our talk last night really calmed her nerves. Yay. Sure thing, Iruka-sensei. Quote. Iruka led me into his office and moved behind his desk. It was obvious to everyone that something was off about him today. He had heavy bags under his eyes. I don't think he was able to sleep a wink last night. That only solidified my conclusion. He knew. Iruka leaned on his desk, staring down blankly at the wood. Naruto, please close the door. He spoke in a strained whisper. I complied, turning around now, still maintaining my Dobby persona. Geez, Iruka-sensei, what's going on with you lately? Iruka. I stared at Naruto. I just couldn't see it. This was an innocent boy, not a monster. I had to act quickly. I rushed over to Naruto and grabbed him by the shoulders. Naruto, you have to listen to me. You are in danger. I spoke out quickly. Like I expected, he showed a confused frown. What are you talking about, sensei? I shook my head, my hands quivering. It's hard to explain. It's the Hokage. He believes that you are responsible for the kidnappings that have been going on the last few years, including Ino. I know you are innocent, but he is convinced. I think he's going to try and kill you. I sputtered. Naruto began to laugh. That's real funny, Iruka-sensei. If the Hokage really wanted me dead, I'm pretty sure he wouldn't have to try anything. He's the Hokage and I'm not even a genin yet. Good one, sensei. Naruto said while continuing to laugh. Naruto, goddammit, you have to listen to me. I think I finally got his attention. He stared up at me with a wide-eyed expression. It's not just you. He also believes that Sasuke and Hinata have been helping you. And Hinata's little sister. You might not know her. Her name is Hanabi. He's going to attack them all. He'll try to capture them, but he won't hesitate to kill them if he has to. You are all still children. Hanabi is only 10 years old. I need you to help me prove your innocence before something terrible happens. I was on the verge of tears as I spoke. I had to break through Naruto's nonchalant exterior. I think I was getting through. Naruto's expression went blank. He pulled away from my grip and moved over to the window behind my desk, looking out on the empty training ground. Kill those three. Good luck. Quote. Naruto's voice was different. He still sounded like his normal happy-go-lucky self, but there was something off about how he spoke. What? Naruto. What are you? I began. I froze when Naruto turned around. His eyes. Those weren't the eyes of the boy I knew. His eyes were as bright blue as they ever were, but there was an intensity there that has never been there before. I'm sorry for playing games with you, Iruka-sensei. I'll give you the respect you deserve. Naruto leaned back against the window sill, his posture relaxed, his hands resting comfortably behind his head. He still moved the same. The only difference were his eyes, those sinister eyes. Naruto, tell me all of that isn't true. It can't be. I barely got the words out. It's totally true. Every word. Actually, the old man kind of downplayed it. I've done way worse. Naruto was laughing. It was the same innocent laugh. He spoke about his terrible deeds as if it was the funniest joke he'd ever heard. I could barely process what I was witnessing. My eyes narrowed. How could you? Naruto raised a brow. Do you really have to ask? I thought over that question, shaking my head. I know the villagers have not been the most kind to you, but they don't deserve what you did to them. Especially not Ino. And, oh my gods, Sakura too. My eyes widened in realization. It made sense now. Naruto smirked, confirming my suspicions. I threw up. It came without warning. I hunched over and hurled my lunch on the ground. Thankfully, I was able to quickly grab a small garbage bin nearby. Naruto watched me quietly, waiting for me to finish. I wiped my lips and looked back up to him. I gritted my teeth. Do you even care? Are you even sorry about what you did? I spat bitterly. Naruto shrugged. Not in the least. They are scum. I felt like I was going to have a heart attack. Who was this and where was the Naruto I'd known for so long? I grabbed my aching chest. I'm sorry if my words hurt you, Aruka. You are one of the few who don't deserve it. And you think they do. I snapped back. Yes. Naruto retorted without hesitation. How can you think that? What did they do to deserve the cruelty you inflicted on them? Tears were streaming down my face as I shouted at him. Enough. Naruto replied simply while turning his back to me. They are all symptoms of this pathetic world, acting out their cruelty with no regard for the well-being of their victims. Not everyone is cruel to the same extent, but they are cruel enough to warrant my wrath. Quote, I didn't know who I was talking to anymore. Naruto's voice was haunting. He stood with his arms crossed, his entire demeanor changing. He stood upright, almost commanding. Who was this? Tell me you are smart enough to see your hypocrisy, Naruto. You accuse others of cruelty given what you've done. You condemn them for their cruelty. Do you condemn yourself? Naruto turned his head to me and gave a small chuckle. Of course I do. I'm no better than them. If the Hokage was strong enough to kill me, to give me to Ibiki and have me tortured, I'd have no moral high ground to stand on. This isn't about having the moral high ground. I hesitated, thinking over my responses now. Naruto was much more intelligent than I thought, than the dead last persona he had been putting on. And by the sounds of it, he was a lot stronger. At least he believed himself to be. Given how the Hokage was preparing an attack rather than striking immediately, there had to be at least some merit to Naruto's strength. I had to stop thinking of the boy in front of me as the Naruto I knew. This was a completely different person. A monster. Despite holding his face, this was not Naruto. I suddenly felt that this conversation was far more important than I initially realized. I stood up now, steeling myself. I released a calming breath and walked over to Naruto to stand at his side. Naruto watched me but made no move to harm me. That's not saying he wouldn't, but at least for right now he seemed to be calm. Maybe I was in danger, maybe he'd try to kill me any moment. I had to remember my training and act as if anything could happen. So what now, Naruto? Will you torture the world for what a few of them did to you? I questioned in a dull, emotionless tone. It's Emperor Naruto. He corrected me. I looked down on him in disbelief. I thought for a second that he might be joking, but one look at the way he carried himself and I knew right away that he was serious. Is that what you are calling yourself now? Emperor? Are you that far gone? Is the sweet boy I knew completely dead? Naruto didn't look at me. He kept staring out the window with his arms crossed. He didn't seem upset by my words. His face was disturbingly stoic. Think what you want, as long as you show respect. Naruto commanded. I paused. A shiver crept up my spine. He scared me. I didn't even know how strong he was, but I got the sense that right now, I was speaking to a ticking time bomb. Emperor Naruto then. The same question. What now? It broke my heart to speak his name like that. It was an acknowledgement that the boy I knew was completely gone. I'll teach this terrible world and its people the lesson it deserves. He stated cryptically. And what lesson is that? That the age of cruelty is coming to an end. That declaration confused me. I frowned. What do you mean? I will dominate this world with an iron fist. One village, one nation at a time. I will bring the world to heel. People are cruel, petty, selfish, warlike. All that is over. I'm going to create a worldwide empire where cruelty is against the law, where lives like mine are made impossible. In doing so, I will cause a lot of pain. A price I gladly pay. I narrowed my eyes, turning to face Naruto now and glaring down at him. So you want to be a tyrant? That's the solution you've come up with. For one who thinks himself so superior, you are quite the fool. I was on my back in the blink of an eye. I didn't even see Naruto move. One moment I was standing in front of Naruto, then next I was staring up at him. He knelt over me on one knee, his hand wrapped around my throat. Careful, he warned. I was surprised by his strength, his speed. I was completely helpless. I couldn't move. My body was paralyzed. I couldn't even reach out to grab his wrist. He could kill me easily. I now understood his power. Naruto's intense gaze bore down on me for a few moments as air left my body. He then pulled away, moving back to the window and allowing me to move. I didn't even see him perform any paralyzing ninjutsu or genjutsu. He truly was a monster. I coughed a bit as I shakily rose to my feet. I regarded him cautiously now. I meant to say that it's hard to believe you would expect the world to be better from a tyrannical rule. I spoke much more respectfully now. Naruto was unfazed by my doubt. It will become better. Especially after I'm done. I have no doubt about that. It's not a matter of if, but when. I balled my fists in frustration. How can you believe that? Name one society in history that becomes more moral, more good because of a tyrant. I challenged. Naruto smiled. His confidence threw me off. He gazed off to the side in a reminiscent fashion. Kagaya. He whispered in reverence. Who? I didn't recognize this name. I was a teacher. I'd read all the history books I showed my students. I'd even read most of the books in the Konoha library. Yet that name was foreign to me. Naruto turned to face me. I wouldn't expect you to know her. Her son is far more famous. You'd know him as the Sage of Six Paths. That name was familiar. I nodded in understanding. The story of the Sage of Six Paths disproves your belief that a good world can come from tyranny. His kindness, compassion, and leadership brought an age of enlightenment and peace. He shepherded a time period without war, bringing prosperity to his people. That's the kind of leader you should be if you want to change the world, Naruto. Not this. I pleaded while gesturing towards him. I didn't call him emperor. He definitely noticed but didn't do anything to harm me. I didn't want to call him emperor. I still felt that there was a speck of the boy I knew left deep inside him. The fact that he was even thinking about trying to make the world better was all the proof I need. It might have been foolish hope, but it was something. You're naive if you believe that. Naruto retorted. I shook my head. What? Naruto scoffed. There was no peace during the sage's time. Sure, he stopped war because he was the strongest and interceded in large-scale conflicts, but the world he created was far from peaceful. There was still slavery, poverty, oppression, the powerful stepping on the weak. People still cared little about each other, stepped over those in need. Peace my ass. Naruto spat. I was stunned. How did he know this? The history books paint that time in the rosiest light because history is made by the victor. However, except for war, every other evil thing still existed in the world. Evil he was too weak to stop. In a world with the sage, a childhood like mine was still possible. Not only possible, but likely. He preached peace, unity, equality. He even went so far as to spread chakra around the world, giving it to everyone. He naively believed that no single person should have more chakra than another person. You know what people did with his gift. Naruto seemed to be growing more agitated as he spoke. I could now see where he was going with his rant. As soon as the sage died, they began to war among each other again. They victimized each other, brutalized each other. The sage's teachings just made it easier for the strong to oppress the weak. He damned the world and empowered the most cruel among society. He was too much of a coward to create a kind of institution that could actually last throughout the ages, punishing the cruel and rewarding the kind. That is why, despite how powerful he was, the most powerful shinobi to ever exist, he was still weak. Naruto hissed. It took me a moment to take in everything Naruto said. And you think tyranny can do better? Naruto nodded. I know it can. I've seen it in the society Kagaya created before her children overthrew her rule. Kagaya created the most successful blueprint for a peaceful, empathetic, compassionate, and orderly society. It wasn't perfect, but it was the closest thing to a utopia that anyone has ever achieved. She was able to do it because she understood human nature better than anyone. She understood that people as a whole won't be good on their own. People are too self-centered. To push real change, you have to do it by force. Kagaya's only mistake was having naive children who ruined everything she created. I'll do it right this time. Once and for all. Quote. I was still trying to comprehend Naruto's vision. How? Naruto narrowed his eyes. By taking away the privileges the people of this world have taken advantage of. I will make it so all the traits that led to a life like mine are punishable by death. Stepping over a person in need will be against the law, showing hate will be against the law. Everyone will be held accountable. The people, the politicians, even the shinobi police. Being selfish, hateful, lacking compassion, those traits are privileges that will no longer exist in my new world. I will make it so that it will be in your best interest to care for your neighbor, and if you don't, you will be devoured. My eyes widened in shock. With all due respect, that's ridiculous, Naruto. Despite Naruto's intelligence, I could still see how childish his ideas were. Naruto paused, glaring me down. I shivered. After a long silence, he tore his gaze away and continued to look out the window. Of course, it would seem that way to you. Given the way this world has functioned up until now, how could you believe anything else? However, that's how it will be. If I have to slaughter 90% of the population because they can't get used to my rule, then so be it. I will no longer tolerate the kind of apathy and lack of empathy that lead to my terrible childhood. No longer. Naruto barked. The power of his voice was something otherworldly. He truly looked like a demon. I had to take a moment to calm myself, closing my eyes and taking a few deep breaths. Naruto, it seems like your beliefs are based on the society of this, Kagaya. How do you know that her society was so much better than ours? Quote. Naruto calmed down a bit. Because I've seen it. How? Through the memories of a friend. You might know him as Kyuubi. Naruto admitted. I was absolutely shocked. What did he mean? Naruto chuckled when seeing my flabbergasted reaction. Kyuubi and all the other demons, they were birthed by the Sage of Six Paths after the sage defeated Kagaya and overthrew her rule. In a way, the tailed beasts were part of Kagaya. Kyuubi and the rest of them inherited Kagaya's memories. It's why Kyuubi is so disgusted by humans. The sage tried to teach the tailed beasts to be peaceful, to live in harmony among themselves and among people. Kyuubi and most of the rest could see the folly in his guidance because they remembered how Kagaya's society functioned compared to the one that the sage created. The sage's ideas were a joke. While the helpless suffered, he preached peace and unity. He did nothing to stop the real problems of the world. Slavery continued, and because he was too much of a coward, he didn't wage a war to free the slaves. Because blood and violence is what it would have taken. Poverty existed, and because the sage was too much of a coward, he didn't wage war on greedy governments that allowed for huge gaps in wealth. I could go on. Say what you want about Kagaya, everyone had what they needed to survive, to pursue happiness to an even larger extent than what exists now. They didn't have some of the freedoms you enjoy, but in exchange they knew that if they followed the rules and did the right thing, that they and their families would be taken care of. I listened to Naruto rant with my mind focused on one thing. I balled my fists. So your entire belief structure comes from a demon. Do you not see how it has manipulated you? Quote. Now that I knew the truth, there was no denying it. Naruto had been corrupted by the demon. Naruto smirked. That would be extremely poetic, would it not? Naruto questioned in a light-hearted manner. I was at a loss for words. Naruto seemed to only be more amused by my confusion. The boy who the world abandoned and burdened with the duty of jailer is corrupted by his prisoner, and lashes out at the careless society which damned him in the first place. Naruto mused. I looked away from him, feeling an aching in my chest. It was guilt. I'm sorry, Naruto. I spoke out while walking forward and closing the gap to him. He watched me warily as I approached. I dropped to my knees and suddenly embraced him in a hug. Naruto. This guy was something else. He was crying, dampening my jacket with his tears. It was far too late for that. Uruka. Naruto was rigid as I hugged him. That coldness only made me hug tighter. I had to break through to him. I know now the extent of what you must have gone through, what it must have felt like to be abandoned and orphaned your entire life. It must have been hell to be looked at with contempt and hate by people who should have shown you warmth. I couldn't see Naruto's face. I didn't want to. Not until I was finished. He stayed quiet and just listened for now. But you can't take your pain out on the world. Maybe a few people deserve it, but not everyone. The type of society you are talking about will be impossible to create. And if you try to punish people for not being as good as you think they can be, all you'll be left to rule over is ashes. You must see that. That's what the demon wants. It has shown you false images of a non-existent past to convince you to follow a path of darkness. It's played on your innocence. The world you are talking about can't exist. You can't outlaw hate, lack of compassion, greed. No one can survive like that. Those things are as integral to human nature as breathing. Even I wouldn't survive under those criteria. I pleaded with him. I just had to get through to him. Uruka. Naruto began. I pulled back just enough to see his face. My heart sunk when I saw his expression. He gave me this look as if I were a child. He shook his head and gazed upon me as if I had no idea what I was talking about. A look of pity. You're wrong about pretty much everything you just said. Not only would you survive in my world, you'd thrive. You could have chosen to hate me, but you didn't. Instead, you walked up to a boy who everyone else ostracized and took time out of your day to show that boy compassion. Not even the other shinobi of this village stepped up to help me. In fact, some shinobi have given me that same scornful gaze. The rest simply don't care. They spill blood and do monstrous things for this village but left a boy like me abandoned. No one stuck up for me but you. You've never even taken a life. You choose to walk a peaceful path of education rather than taint your hands with blood. You are a perfect example of the type of person who will fill my empire. Quote, I began to shake Naruto now. I was so frustrated. Don't idolize me, Naruto. The fact that I haven't killed anyone doesn't make me better than my brothers and sisters in arms. The fact that I have the opportunity to recognize a boy in need because I wasn't on the field of battle shouldn't be MNING to them. The only reason this village even exists is because they are fighting every day for our survival. And yes, they kill to protect this village, but that doesn't make me better than them, or more good or more moral. What they do must be done. They are sacrificing their well-being in order to keep us safe. That should be revered, not condemned. Naruto nodded. Was I getting through to him? I agree that what they are doing is necessary. It is a sacrifice, yet it is tainting all the same. A necessary evil, but evil nonetheless. Naruto sounded more sympathetic to me now. He pulled away and released a small sigh, turning his back to me. I will create a world where none of that is necessary anymore. No one will need to taint their heart with such evil. Quote, again, Naruto, that's impossible. That demon has fooled you. It can't be done. I just had to convince him. Naruto shook his head. I held doubts at one point as well. You are right to be suspicious of Kyuubi's motives. He clearly hates people. He would have every reason to trick me. Which is why I independently investigated his claims. I paused now. What? How? The core of his trick is based on a society that existed thousands of years ago. He's tricked you into believing that a utopia came from tyranny. Naruto nodded. That would be a good trick. However, it simply isn't. I can create clones, lots of clones. Thousands. In the past year, I've sent them all across the world, scavenging and researching. I've interviewed members of a holy order which still follows Keigaya's teachings and catalogued her history. There exists an order for the sage as well. Both held interesting perspectives. I've excavated remnants of where Keigaya's society should have been. I've found ancient texts and artifacts proving that Keigaya existed, that her utopia existed. I had the same doubts as you, but now the truth is undeniable. She really did it. I was flabbergasted. The implications of Naruto's abilities were astounding. The reason Keigaya created a society as harmonious as she did isn't completely benevolent. Kyuubi showed me her motivations, her fears. She believed that a doom would soon befall the world and that the only way the world would survive was to be completely united. Given that belief, she did everything in her power to unite everyone. It's why her rule and laws were so strict. It's why she was successful. She truly believed that if she didn't bring the world to heel, then the world would be destroyed. Regardless of if her beliefs were true, the efficacy of her methods and the paradise she created can't be denied. I will build upon that blueprint and perfect it, creating a type of utopia that the world has never seen before. In my lifetime, there will be peace, harmony, compassion in everyone. Believe it. I grabbed my desk nearby to steady myself. I no longer believed that Naruto could be convinced to stray away from his bloody path. He spoke with the same conviction as he always did. Except instead of talking about being Hokage, he was talking about creating an empire, with him as emperor. In a twisted way, this was still the same Naruto I knew. It's as if someone took Naruto's beliefs and flipped them upside down. So he fought for those beliefs and believed in his dream just as strongly as he used to believe in this dream of becoming Hokage. Knowing Naruto, I didn't think anything could stop him. The gravity of this situation was just hitting me. I hunched over and nearly threw up again as I accepted the terrible reality. However, I still had a little fight left. Okay, Naruto. Emperor Naruto, if that is what you insist on being called. But what does torturing innocents like Ino and Sakura have to do with creating that harmonious society? Naruto shrugged carelessly. Oh, it was because they were annoying and bullied my empress. My empress originally took them, but she only did so with my blessing. I just finished what she started. That kind of pettiness will not go unpunished in my world. They learned that their actions have real consequence. Naruto stated casually. I was mortified. Do you really believe that what they did justified the horrors inflicted upon them? Kidnapping. Torture. They were gone for days. It's easy for anyone to see how much the experience damaged Sakura. And I can assume by Ino's absence that she was damaged at least as much. Naruto scoffed. Who's to say what punishment fits the crime? There is no objective standard for justice. If you don't want to be punished, then don't commit the crime. Justice is what I say it is. That's the point in banning hate and lack of compassion. It's purposefully vague so that I can interpret the law in any way I see fit. It will make sure people think twice before sending a glare, or bullying, or doing any other type of toxic, destructive, or careless action. I could feel my frustration building again. Again, you point the finger at others while that same finger is stained in blood. You call them scum. Yet you think they should be punished for exhibiting the same type of behavior as you. You claim you want to create a better world, but how can you do that if you can't even be an example of the type of person you want your people to be? Naruto rubbed his nose confidently. I'm surprised at you, Iruka-sensei. If anyone would know, it would be you. I was clearly confused. Naruto shook his head. My people shouldn't be like me. That's the point. After I die, no one will have the right to do what I do. So that kind of evil will die with me. I will be emperor, but eventually I will transition the world into a sort of democracy, with checks and balances. I will oversee the society that I create until I'm confident it can function without me. That way the society continues to be good after I die, because not even the government will have right to be cruel. Only me and the few I grant exception to. The government will be enforcers of the law through non-lethal methods, and the only evil that will remain is the impartial judge, Kyuubi. While I live, I'll grant exception to a few others as well. We will be the only exception to the law, but that isn't so different from how most societies are. I will functionally be my own government entity. Every government, historically, has monopolized righteous violence. Armies, police forces, these are government entities. A police officer can assault you and it's okay because they have been granted special rights by the laws set in place. A government soldier can wage war, and neither that government nor that soldier is necessarily considered evil by the people because the government is granted special rights. Same concept will apply to me. I can do whatever I want because I'll be the government. Well, the head of the government. While I'm alive, I'll grant myself the right to do whatever I want. The only difference between me and your government is that the Hokage is elected and I won't be. But that's not a big deal anyway, and it won't in any way hinder the creation of my perfect empire. Naruto seemed to have thought out everything. Still, I have to try to poke holes in his logic where I could. What you are doing is more than just evil, Naruto. It's wrong. Can't you see that? Naruto rolled his eyes now. I think he was growing impatient. According to who? The people of your society. If you get 10 people from 10 different countries in a room, they will have 10 different interpretations of what constitutes good and evil, right and wrong. Hell, you could get 10 people from the same society or religion and still get 10 different answers. Even when they agree that, for example, murder is wrong. They will disagree on what constitutes murder. Morality is completely arbitrary. It's just used to get people to behave in a way that is conducive to a society most people want. You would not want your neighbor to rape your children, kill your family, or rob your house without recourse, so you create a set of rules that makes it easier to live among each other. That's all it is. Just a set of rules that certain groups of people have agreed upon. There is nothing objective about it. So why should I care what the mob thinks about my behavior? What's a mob to a god? I audibly gasped. A god? Naruto's eyes narrowed at me, a sinister smirk playing across his lips. Another arbitrary term, a malleable concept that changes depending upon individual civilizations, cultures, religions, families, people. Given the power and influence I will wield, that term fits me perfectly. No one will be able to challenge my rule. I will be able to do and say whatever I want to whoever I want. My empress along with me. Quote, it was haunting, listening to Naruto speak in such a monstrous way. But something he said stood out to me. He'd been talking about it all along, but my mind finally focused on it. Empress. Naruto's expression visibly softened. Yes. Honestly, I could care less what people think about me. Their ideas of good and evil, right and wrong are meaningless to me. Now that I've learned how arbitrary those concepts are, how subjective they are, who cares? However, I know that my empress will care about the judgment of the mob. So really, the status of God and emperor is mostly to make her feel better about the things we do. I'll assure her that she needn't feel guilty because of the special rights I've granted us. Our behavior will be no different from most other governments. Even Konoha has torturers. You wage war and decide who to kill, who to hurt, who to torture. Sure, Konoha has slightly different criteria for their decision, but it hasn't always been that way. Konoha has tortured and killed plenty of innocent people because it was in their best interest. Governments throughout the history of the world have done the same thing. You do what you think is necessary, and oftentimes, just because it's convenient. I'll grant her and I those special governmental rights, special godly rights. No one will be able to stop us because I am the strongest. And really, it's as simple as that. If I call myself a god and there is no one strong enough to stop me, then functionally does it really make a difference if I'm not a god? It's all made up anyway, so why not have fun? Naruto ended his sentence by letting out one of his patented Naruto laughs. His laughter still sounded so innocent, so cheerful. I collapsed, falling on my ass. I was simply overwhelmed. Is there any good in you left, Naruto? I choked out the words. I cradled my own head and stared blankly at the ground, tears streaking down my cheeks. How could we have failed him so much? I think so, at least a little bit. Naruto's voice was softer now. When I looked up to him, I saw a sympathetic gaze looking down at me. I told you that I don't believe in your version of good and evil, but for simplicity's sake, I will answer your question in the context of your moral frame. Work. Given that, I do think there is some good left in me. Really, Naruto? He nodded gently. Yay. Otherwise, I wouldn't care what happened to the world. I'd simply set it on fire just to watch it burn. But I don't want to do that, not to everyone at least. I'll kill tons of people, innocents included, but I will also find catharsis in providing a good life for those few who deserve it. I do want the world to be better. When it comes to changing the world, I have a real, singular focus. Make the type of world where a tragic childhood like mine is impossible. That is where my conviction lies. That world can't exist through your methods. If I want real, lasting change, I can't just be an inspiring, strong leader that advocates for peace and unity through diplomacy and only wage defensive wars when absolutely necessary. That's the kind of leader the sage was, and he failed spectacularly. So many were left behind because when push comes to shove, people are shit. So I have to do things my way if I want the tragedy of my childhood to be made impossible. The fact that I even care about preventing that childhood for others means there has to be some good left in me, right, Iruka-sensei? Quote, I saw it again. A hint of the boy I knew. There was doubt in his voice. He was really asking my opinion. I wiped my tears away and stood up, walking over to him and placing a hand along his shoulder. Yes, Naruto. That is good. I just wish you would find a gentler path. Naruto was more receptive to my touch now. He sighed and gazed off to the side in thought. I'm not perfect. I know your method wouldn't work, but maybe my way isn't completely necessary either. Maybe there is a perfect middle ground in order to eliminate hate from the world. If there is, I don't know how to achieve it, and no one else does either. Other than Kagaya, there is no other example in history of the type of hate and cruelty-free society that I dream of. You'll just have to make do with my solution. Naruto stated sternly. I was still conflicted about his goals, but I nodded in understanding. He turned away, walking over to the door now. He began to open it but stopped, speaking with his back to me. Iruka-sensei, please don't get in my way. You can't challenge my strength. No one can. However, you can do a lot of good in my empire. Your voice, if calculated and respectful, can save lives and make me a slightly gentler ruler. But if you oppose me, I will kill you. Unlike the rest of the mob, yours would be a death I'd mourn. So for both of our sakes, please find a way to do what you do without standing in my path. Naruto closed the door after his warning. I flopped down on my chair, staring at the door in exasperation. I had a lot to think about. Someone was in my apartment. I could sense them from the other side of the door without even needing to use my demonic eyes. I sniffed. I knew that scent. This ought to be interesting. When I opened the door, I saw the old man standing in my living room. He had his back facing me, looking out the window. I casually moved to the kitchen and opened my fridge, grabbing a carton of orange juice. I poured myself a GL without a care in the world. This doesn't need to get violent, Naruto. The Hokage spoke with his back still facing me. What would be the fun in that? I retorted. Sarutobi. I glanced back at Naruto. He was cool and relaxed, drinking a glof juice while leaning his back against the kitchen counter. His poise was unsettling. I knew then that he was every bit the monster that my investigation led me to believe. The fact that he'd kept his activities hidden for so long also told me of his strength. I knew he was not to be underestimated. Then the Kyuubi has escaped, I remarked in a defeated tone. Nope. The old furball is still locked away. Though I do let him out sometimes to get some fresh air. Naruto stated nonchalantly while patting his own belly. I glanced down to where his seal would be, hidden behind his jacket. You let him out. Quote. Naruto shrugged. He likes to get laid and hunt from time to time. Better than being cooped up in a cage forever. It took me a moment to process what Naruto was saying. What exactly was their relationship? If Kyuubi could be released, then how strong was it? It couldn't be fully free, otherwise I'm sure it would have attacked the village by now. Naruto smirked. You don't have to worry about him. I won't let him destroy the first village in my future empire. Quote. I stared at Naruto in disbelief. Your empire? Naruto finished his glance, set it down on the counter. He rested his hands comfortably behind his head in relaxation. Yep. I shook my head while taking out a pipe. I took my time to light it. Naruto just watched me patiently. This little game of yours is over, Naruto. Don't you understand that? Even now my shinobi are bringing Hinata, Sasuke, and Hanabi into custody. Quote. Naruto raised a brow. Yay. How many squads did you send after each of them? Given the time that we split up after school, they each should have been alone by the time your shinobi attacked. I'm sure you planned that out. Quote. I huffed a cloud of smoke from my nose. Does it really matter? Naruto narrowed his eyes. What could it hurt to indulge my curiosity? I shook my head and turned my back to him, looking out on the impoverished neighborhood. I sent one Anbu squad for each of them. They haven't officially graduated yet, but I expect them to be competent enough shinobi for Genin. Sasuke was top of his class, Hinata a close second. Know that the only reason I sent an entire squad is because I wanted them to come peacefully. It's much easier to subdue a target instead of killing them when you have overwhelming force. They will be taken to a hidden facility to await judgment. I promise to be gentle with them. Despite them helping you, I'm still aware that they are only children. Quote. I glanced back to gauge Naruto's reaction. He looked at me with a wide-eyed expression. His next reaction shocked me. He laughed hard. Naruto grabbed the kitchen counter and hunched over, cackling madly. Oh my gods, really? One squad each. He barely got the words out. His laughter was disturbing. He had the innocent voice of a child, but there was something sinister underneath. It reminded me of someone and brought back terrible memories. Memories of the student I failed. Goddamn it. Not another one. We truly have failed you, haven't we? I couldn't help how bitter and defeated my voice sounded. Here stood another boy driven mad by this terrible world. Just like Orochimaru, I failed to protect him. I felt a guilt I haven't felt in years. Naruto wiped tears from his eyes as he calmed down. He took a moment to gain his poise before standing up straight and eyeing me with a carefree expression. Totally. You and your whole Ing village. It is what it is. Don't worry too much about me. I've found my own happiness. Naruto spoke gentler now. He walked forward to stand by my side. I still didn't move to attack him. I'm curious. Who did you send after Hinata? Hopefully no one too important. I frowned. Why does that matter, Naruto? A slick smirk grew across his face. Because they are very, very dead. Hinata, Kyogi, One of the masked shinobi dashed forward to catch the lifeless body of the one I attacked. I backed up and dropped into my fighting stance. What the hell? Isn't she still in the academy? The masked man said. We can't hold back. A woman spoke up now. She seemed to be the leader. They both had masks. I narrowed my eyes at them. You should leave now. They didn't. The woman began to make hand signs. I didn't let her finish. While she was in the middle of a hand sign, I sped towards her. She appeared to move in slow motion because of how fast I was relative to her. When I thrust my hand to her chest, an eruption of chakra shot from her back. The force of it actually punched a hole through a series of trees behind her. Blood had spurt from her mask. I stepped to the side and let her fall. Captain. The other shinobi screamed. I warned you. Quote. Burn in hell. The shinobi bared his kunai and charged. Even without seeing his face, I could tell how devastated he was. Still, they brought this on themselves. I couldn't leave anything to chance. A moment later, he fell at my feet. Sarutobi. You can't be serious if you think Hinata is strong enough to kill Anbu level shinobi. Naruto shrugged. Doesn't really matter if you believe me. You'll find out soon enough. Those three are on a whole different level. The squad you sent after Sasuke and Hanabi are still alive. Because they will head the police force and royal guard of my empire, I've taught them not to take life in the performing of their duty and even in self-defense. It's more risky. They have to put themselves in more dangerous situations in order to ensure the safety of their enemies and of criminals. I can't have a police force that puts their safety over that of the citizens. That's a recipe for oppression and abuse of authority. No, those with power need to be held to a higher level of accountability and a higher standard. Their roles will truly be one of sacrifice. They will earn the notoriety they will receive. Quote. Doubt filled me as I listened to him. You truly believe Hanabi and Sasuke are stronger than Junin level shinobi? Naruto looked up at me. A shiver crept up my spine. His eyes were no longer blue. They were a dark, demonic red. His pupils were slitted. I can see them. You sent Asuma's squad after Sasuke and Kurenai after Hanabi. Your squads are unconscious, but they'll live. I was flabbergasted. Am I speaking to Kyuubi right now? His voice still sounded the same, but the transformation was alarming. Naruto shook his head. Nah, I don't let him use my body anymore since he can use his own body. Over the years I've been siphoning Kyuubi's energy. I no longer need to borrow his power anymore. It's truly mine. More than that, we are connected. His chakra has fused with mine and created a new form of chakra more powerful than either one alone. The thing about Kyuubi is that he's a wild beast, even when he fights. So he has plenty of weaknesses to be exploited. Despite his near-endless supply of chakra, he has still fallen victim to genjutsu. I won't make the same mistakes. I've unlocked the true potential of his power. Now my power dwarfs even his. Naruto's eyes became blue again. I no longer felt like I had control of the situation. So then, the squad I sent after Hinata. Super dead. While it will be Hanabi and Sasuke's job to put others' safety before their own, that will not be the case for my empress. I've instructed her to never hold back in a fight, always go for the kill. Like you mentioned, it's harder to win a fight when you are holding back and trying to capture or disable someone. I won't let Hinata put herself at risk. You can attack Sasuke and Hanabi. Hell, when I'm in the right mood I might let you and your shinobi live after attacking me. But don't threaten Hinata. It won't end well. I was still processing everything that Naruto claimed. Anyway, shall we get to it then? Naruto proposed. Naruto began to crack his neck from side to side, rolling his shoulders. His eyes became red again. I see you've surrounded this building with shinobi. It's smart to focus most of your forces on me. I'm disappointed that you only have about 100, but I suppose everyone else is on a mission or otherwise occupied. Quote. I huffed a cloud of smoke through my nose. If you can see that, then why fight? You don't really believe you can defeat all of us, do you, Naruto? Naruto bent over to touch his toes, still stretching. He had to stifle a bit of laughter. Oh, you all are no challenge for me. Hell, Hanabi could beat you all herself. I can't really call this a fight. I just made a bet with Kyuubi and we're going to see who wins the bet. Naruto stated casually. I was becoming on edge. What he said can't be true. It just can't be. I still was assessing the situation, so I wanted to keep him talking. And what bet is that, Naruto? How many of you will I have to kill before you all surrender? Kyuubi thinks at least 60%. He believes humans are extremely stubborn. He's right in a way, but I have another belief. Anyway, did you want to do this here, right now? There will probably be a lot of collateral damage if we fight in this area. I paused to think over Naruto's words. You would be willing to move to a different location? Naruto finally finished stretching. He rested his arms behind his head again. Sure. Doesn't really matter to me. I nodded and opened the window. Then follow me. Naruto did just that. We traveled across the roofs before soon reaching the forest and moving from branch to branch. My army followed in the distance. They signaled to me, asking for my permission to attack, but I never gave the signal. No, I had a terrible feeling about this. Hanabi. I walked into the clearing to see Hinata looking down on 3 bodies. Hinata-ne-chan, are you okay? She ran over to me and embraced me in a hug. I'm okay. What about you? I returned the embrace for a moment before pulling back. Yes, I'm fine. They attacked me too. They were easy though. I'm surprised. Their masks are Anbu masks, but they are so weak. Hinata pulled away from our hug and smiled warmly towards me. You're stronger than you know. That meant a lot coming from her. Sasuke arrived soon after. He was carrying 3 unconscious bodies under his arms. He dropped them unceremoniously while inspecting us. You two okay? Hinata nodded and gave a sweet smile. I smirked. Did you have any doubts? Sasuke matched my smirk. Hinata. Those two are so cute together. It's a shame they are still split up. Maybe after a while Naruto will let them get back together. I hope so. Hanabi snapped me out of my thoughts by walking past me to inspect the shinobi I killed. She bent down and gasped. Wow. They are completely hollow. Sasuke walked behind Hanabi. What do you mean? Quote. Hanabi looked over to me in disbelief. I bowed my head, unable to hide my embarrassed blush. All the internal organs in their torso have been turned to mush. It's just blood and bone. It was Sasuke's turn to give a surprised expression. I suppose I should expect nothing less from the Empress. Still though, Sasuke said while staring down at the bodies in astonishment. I poked my fingers together. I had to. Hanabi stood up straight and nodded at me. Of course you did. I'm just surprised you are so strong. I still have a lot of work to do. Hanabi admitted. Thank you, I said with a warm smile. The admiration of my little sister meant a lot. Hanabi had her Byakugan flared. I could tell she was looking past me now. The Emperor has left the village alongside the Hokage and at least 100 other shinobi. Empress, your orders. Hanabi's question caught me off guard. I could see now that both Hanabi and Sasuke were taking their duties very seriously right now. This was an important moment. My eyes wandered. Well, I suppose we can follow at a safe distance. When Naruto wants us, he will give us the signal. I don't think he'd want us to interfere before that though. I proposed. Sasuke and Hanabi nodded at the same time. Sasuke picked up the 3 unconscious shinobi bodies once more. You get those. I have a feeling the Emperor will want us to bring them. Sasuke instructed towards Hanabi, gesturing towards the 3 shinobi I killed. Hanabi nodded and picked up the 3 bodies. They were much larger than her, but given her strength she had no problem carrying them. Ready, Empress? Hanabi questioned. Both of them looked at me for direction. It was a bit nerve-wracking. This all felt so official. I didn't fully know how to feel about it, but they seemed to approach the situation with clarity. I drew from their strength. I nodded resolutely. Let's go. Sarutobi. We traveled for far longer than I intended. I was thinking over multiple scenarios, contemplating the situation we were in. I knew that my battalion was getting restless, but I couldn't have them strike. Not until I knew for sure. We arrived at the Valley of the End. I felt I had to make a decision. I jumped from a branch into the river which formed beneath the waterfall. My battalion made themselves known, littering the mountainside. Naruto walked across the river water, looking up at all my shinobi. I've never actually been here before. Cool place. The craftsmanship on those statues is spectacular. I'll try not to mess them up. Quote. He still spoke so casually. A few shinobi dropped down behind me. Might Guy was the first to speak. Hokage-sama, may I ask why you have not given the order to attack? Kakashi spoke next. There must be something we don't understand about the situation. Quote, a few more dropped down to join the group. I made note of Inoichi Yamanaka, Ino's father. He had a striking resemblance to Ino. Like the rest of his clan, he had blonde hair styled into a ponytail. Hokage-sama, please give us the order to strike. Inoichi requested. Inoichi was usually very calm and calculating, but at this moment I could see how on edge he was. Given what Naruto and Hinata had put Ino through, I couldn't blame him. Still, not yet. I looked to Naruto, the boy waiting patiently. Naruto, you said that the shinobi I sent to capture Sasuke, Hanabi and Hinata were defeated. I still find this hard to believe. I pointed out. All eyes settled on Naruto now. I could see the look of shock and disbelief on the faces of my shinobi. Naruto grinned, turning his head to glance behind him. As he did, there were 3 whirl of leaves. Out of those leaves stepped the 3 children I'd ordered captured. What was especially alarming was the fact that I didn't notice them before. I could tell that no one in my army noticed them. I glanced off to the side to see Hiyashi's clan and gauge their reaction. Hiyashi and his Byakugan eyes should have spotted them, but he said nothing. That was an unsettling thought. If the Byakugan didn't notice them, then my fears were all but confirmed. Naruto settled my conflicted mind once and for all. Sasuke. Naruto called out. Yes, Emperor. Sasuke said with a polite bow of his head before tossing bodies our way. My shinobi moved to catch those bodies. I went for my son, catching Asuma in my arms. He was unconscious but alive. That girl, Hanabi, moved after that. She tossed 3 bodies towards us. These ones were unmoving. I gave one look at the shinobi who caught them and I immediately understood. Naruto didn't lie. Do you understand now? Naruto questioned. I dropped my pipe. It sank into the water below my feet. Hokage-sama, Kakashi questioned. Naruto grinned. I was the only one who understood the gravity of our situation. Hinata. The Hokage looked like he'd seen a ghost. It felt surreal to see him appear so afraid. Naruto is so amazing. What about the others? The Hokage questioned. Naruto looked back at Hanabi. Hanabi bowed her head. I didn't think to bring them, Emperor. They are unconscious near the Hyuga compound. Hanabi stated apologetically. Naruto shrugged. That's okay. I think he gets the idea. Naruto stated in a carefree manner. That was a relief. Naruto didn't seem too upset. In fact, it was the exact opposite. He seemed to be in a great mood. Anyway, shall we begin? Naruto proposed. Naruto took a step forward and all the shinobi readied themselves. They had no idea what they were getting into. I almost pitied them. Naruto flared his chakra next. It was slow at first. I could tell he was playing with them. The army was becoming more on edge with every step that he took. Water receded from him just from the power of his energy. I knew that he hadn't even begun to show his strength. A lashing, exploding aura of red and blue chakra surrounded him. Some of it fused together to make purple. It felt wild and untamed, yet I knew that Naruto was in full control. Then the chakra grew, and grew. In a few seconds the water of the river was rushing away from him, creating large waves. He's so amazing. Sarutobi. Orders, sir. Guy stated in alarm. I couldn't give the order. How many would die? Could he be defeated? Was it really true that he had the power of the 9-tailed fox? If that was true, then we were doomed. I only knew one method of subduing the fox, and while I prepared that jutsu, so many of my shinobi would fall. There isn't even a guarantee that it would work. How did it come to this? I raised my hand, just a second away from ordering my people to their deaths. Before I dropped my fist, something Naruto said earlier stood out to me. Naruto, you said you made a bet with Kyuubi. You told me Kyuubi's side of the bet, but what of yours? Naruto stopped, raising a brow. His energy receded back into his body. I was on edge. His mastery of chakra was astounding. Upon seeing that energy, I understood the gravity of what we were dealing with. Oh, that. I told him that there was a chance that I only needed to kill about 1% of you. I don't see a scenario where you give up without someone dying. But after the first death, there is a chance. Most likely I'll have to kill most of you though. Kyuubi is probably going to win the bet. Naruto explained carelessly. I could see the way many of my shinobi shifted uncomfortably when hearing Naruto speak in such a monstrous way. I closed my eyes to gather my thoughts. Naruto began walking towards us again. I knew he was moments away from striking. My shinobi would have to defend themselves and they'd be slaughtered in the process. I dropped to my knees. Naruto. This guy was something else. The look on the army's faces was priceless. Sarutobi bowed his head and placed his hands properly atop his lap. Emperor Naruto the First have a request. This was quite the turn of events. Hokage-sama, what are you doing? One shinobi questioned in shock. He ignored them. I was thoroughly amused. Speak. I ordered. I stood with my arms crossed, waiting patiently for his request. I acknowledge your strength, yet at the same time my duty demands I oppose you, that we all oppose you and the rule you seek to impose upon us. There is only one way that this can be resolved without bloodshed. Let us attack you. Even I wasn't expecting that. Let you attack me. Sarutobi raised his head and looked at me, giving a small nod. Yes. You said yourself that you don't consider this a fight. If we are so weak compared to your strength, then it should be no problem to defeat us without taking a life. If a toddler runs at you with a knife, you needn't kill them to win the fight. Prove to us your strength, let us attack you with all our might. If we are unable to defeat you, then what choice do we have but to submit? I looked back onto Sasuke, Hinata and Hanabi. They had the same perplexed look as me. Hokage-sama, you can't be serious. No matter what, we cannot concede to any opposing force. Especially not someone who calls themselves emperor. It is against who we are. Guy stated resolutely. The Hokage continued to ignore the protests of his shinobi, looking only at me. I grinned. Alright. This sounds fun. I won't kill any of your shinobi as long as they acknowledge me as emperor afterwards. Attack. Hinata. Naruto was absolutely amazing. I could barely keep up with his movements. The shinobi attacked him with everything they had. It wasn't even close. Explosions and jutsu rocked the area. There were so many shuriken that it looked like rain. Sasuke, Hanabi and I didn't interfere. We fell back and let Naruto fight on his own. I knew he'd want that. Naruto dashed about, sending powerful bursts of energy to groups of shinobi. It surprised me, but maybe I shouldn't have been so surprised. He was Naruto after all. Hiashi. I never would have imagined that someone besides a Hyuga would be able to use our techniques. No, this was more than that. He was a master. He used a modified version of the air palm. Each palm strike sent an explosion of energy outward. His chakra invaded the target's nervous system, shutting down all but their most essential organs. The shinobi who were hit with that technique collapsed, unable to move. It was a brilliant modification and advancement of the Hyuga fighting style. There was no denying it now. Emperor Naruto would bring the entire world to heel. Our clan still maintained our facade. We attacked him and were thoroughly put down. As the clan head, I watched from above, in awe of his power. The battle lasted maybe 30 minutes at most. I was one of the last to fall, feeling as that blast hit me and my entire body shut down. I could barely stop myself from sinking into the river. I at least had enough strength for that. I saw the Hokage attempt to use the Reaper Death Seal, but even that was useless. Naruto could not be stopped. The Emperor could not be stopped. Sarutobi. The area was filled with the fallen bodies of my shinobi. Naruto wiped some sweat from his brow, a bright smile upon his face. Wow, you actually made me bust a sweat. Yay, killing you would have been way easier. I guess I still have some training to do yet. Naruto said while releasing a chipper bit of laughter. I shakily rose to my feet, cradling my chest. Every movement felt like a struggle. Naruto walked towards me now, his arms resting comfortably behind his head. We done? Naruto questioned in a warning tone. I bowed my head, my teeth gritted in frustration. What could we do? No. The jagged voice of Inoichi spoke out. The defeated man rose to his feet, his entire body shaking. He looked like he was going to collapse at any moment. Naruto narrowed his eyes at him. Fighting is pointless. You can't stop me. No one can. Naruto declared, turning to face Inoichi now. Inoichi, stand down. I ordered. He shook his head, tears streaming down his cheeks. But at the same time he looked to Naruto with a narrowed gaze. With all due respect, Hokage-sama. I cannot. After what this monster did to my daughter, I can't just bow to him. This tyrant. This demon. Inoichi fished a kunai from his leg pouch and pointed it at Naruto. I know what you are. We will never give in. As he spoke those words, many other shinobi also rose. They were similarly weak. I suspected that a light breeze could topple them over. Naruto crossed his arms. His chipper demeanor faded in an instant. Right now you aren't fighting for survival. You don't even know the type of empire I'd build. No, your motives are much more dark. Naruto accused. Any empire you would build would be evil. We all know what you've done. If that is the foundation you use to build a nation, then I'll fight you to my last breath. I'll never concede this world to you. Inoichi proclaimed. I could see Naruto's patience waning. He glanced to the side where his three accomplices stood. Sasuke and Hanabi disappeared. I had no way of knowing where they were going. All nations are stained with blood. Every single one. You're just bitter that you've lost. Your time is over. Kneel and there will be a place for you, for your family, for all those you care about. I won't ask again. Naruto's voice darkened. Inoichi. I pleaded with him to no avail. If anything, his resolve steeled. He dropped into a low fighting stance. After what you did to my baby, you can burn in hell. Inoichi hissed. Naruto stopped in front of him, his face contorting into a snarl. You've brought this on yourself. Sasuke, Hanabi. As he spoke, Sasuke and Hanabi appeared again. This time they were carrying large black bags. They both kneeled in front of Naruto and presented the black bags to him. They emptied the bags to reveal two people, bound and gagged. Ino, Shizuru. Inoichi screamed in alarm. I looked on in horror as Naruto grabbed both women by their hair, lifting them up. Let them go, bastard. Inoichi proclaimed. Naruto glanced over to Sasuke. Sasuke sped over and landed a powerful punch to the man's gut. He fell over coughing blood. Hinata. Oh gods. I didn't know it would be like this. I could see Ino and her mother crying. When did Naruto give Sasuke and Hanabi those orders? How did they know what to do? I felt overwhelmed. I covered my mouth with both hands. I hope Naruto wasn't going to do what I think he was going to do. Naruto. I ripped the tape from Ino and her mother's mouths. They immediately started screaming and struggling in my grip. The family spoke to each other, but it didn't matter what they were saying. I'm so sick of this. If you want to be consumed by hate, so be it. But your actions have consequences. Renounce him, renounce his hate. Such a thing will have no place in the world I will create. Ino looked at me with teary eyes. I could see how much she hated me. Her mother maintained the same fiery gaze. They struggled in my grip, but I ignored their weak protests. Let them go, demon. Inoichi spat. I've finally had enough. Behold the cost of your hate. I slit their throats. The blood of Ino and her mother filled the water below. No. Inoichi screamed. Hinata screamed from the side. She was crying as well. I'll apologize to her later. For now, lessons were sorely needed. Hinata. He killed them. He killed Ino. My gaze lingered on the lifeless form of Ino and her mother. I felt like I was going to faint. Oh Naruto, why? Naruto carelessly tossed their lifeless bodies at the father. He caught them and wailed. I could feel his pain. Naruto was emotionless as he closed the gap between them. He stood over the man in an imposing, overbearing way. Tell me, was your hate worth the cost? Naruto questioned heartlessly. The man held a devastated expression. He couldn't speak. I think he was trying, but the words wouldn't leave his throat. I had to look away. I couldn't watch any longer. Oh gods. As I looked away, I caught a glimpse of a familiar gesture from Naruto. He held out his arm. I knew what that meant. Despite how horrified I was, I rushed over to his side, leaning against his torso as his arm wrapped around my waist. He squeezed me close. I think he realized how upset I was. Despite everything that was going on, his priority was to reassure me. That calmed me down a lot. Anyone else feel that their hate is worth the cost? Naruto warned. Each and every shinobi dropped to their knees now, bowing their heads. The area was deathly silent except for the wailing of Ino's father. Naruto let me go now, heading over to Inoichi. Inoichi looked up again with a defeated gaze. Naruto slit his throat. I gasped, nearly jumping out of my skin. As the man fell over his family, a large growl could be heard from the side. Kyuubi made himself known. Kyuubi was gigantic, as big as when I first saw him. He emerged from the forest standing at least 50 feet tall. One of Kyuubi's tails reached down to pick up the fallen bodies of Ino's family. He picked up all three and swallowed them whole. I've seen Kyuubi do this before, but knowing it was Ino who he was eating was unsettling. Beyond unsettling, Naruto looked at the rest of the shinobi now. The world is changing. This is just one example of behavior which will no longer be tolerated in my empire. Hate will become extinct. That and so much more. This is just the beginning. Naruto performed a few hand signs and slammed his hand upon the surface of the water. A large cloud of smoke erupted, and out of the smoke fell a gigantic scroll. It was the size of Naruto's entire body. Naruto grabbed it from the air and cradled it under his arm before walking towards the Hokage. Rise, Naruto ordered. The Hokage hesitated but ultimately complied. Naruto handed the man the scroll. He was clearly confused. This scroll holds the blueprint for my empire. Call it a constitution. It goes over the laws that will govern those under my rule. It clearly lays out rights and things that will be punished. This is a living, breathing document which can change, but for now, it is your best way to understand my will. The Hokage maintained a conflicted gaze while holding it. If your people cannot adjust to my rule, I will slaughter them. Naruto threatened. The Hokage opened it and went wide-eyed. Sarutobi. I felt like this was the beginning of the end of the world. Even with a brief glance, I could tell that these expectations would be impossible to fulfill. He was banning hate, homelessness, poverty. This seemed to be the dreams of a child, yet that child was Naruto. An unstoppable force of nature. We were doomed. Naruto seemed to be reading my mind because he grew a knowing grin. I am not without mercy. I watched him warily. I realize how daunting this task would be. Restructuring your society to meet my demands seems impossible, especially given how the world is at this moment. So I will give you time. Naruto turned away and returned to Hinata's side. She fell into his embrace. They both had their backs to me and the rest of my shinobi. 6 years. You have 6 years to prepare your people. In the meantime, I will be taking a much-needed vacation. Well, a vacation of sorts. Konoha will be the first village of my empire. When I return, I expect the people to acknowledge me as their emperor. You know what happens if they don't. Quote, Naruto warned. Emperor Naruto, if I may. I questioned. He seemed like he was about to leave. These things you ask for, they are impossible. I can't imagine any village anywhere can meet these demands. Will you truly destroy us all if we can't meet your expectations? Naruto's eyes narrowed. His blue eyes flashed red. What the hell do you think? And with that, Naruto was gone. Even his exit was haunting. Unlike most who left in a whirl of leaves, Naruto erupted in a plume of fire. Kyuubi stayed back, the large fox glaring down at us. But it too disappeared in a similar fashion. Gods help us all. Hinata. Naruto carried me in his arms bridal style as he jumped through the trees. Sasuke and Hanabi followed at his side. I was lost in thought. I'm sorry, Hinata-chan. Naruto spoke up, drawing my attention. I poked my fingers together. Why, you don't have to apologize. As emperor, it's your right to discipline the people any way you see fit. I struggled to speak. Despite saying that, my mind kept visualizing the faces of Ino and her family. Naruto shook his head. I know that, but I still see how it has affected you. I don't want that for you. I'm sorry for upsetting you. I bowed my head. Then, was that really necessary? I questioned. Naruto's gaze wandered. No, it wasn't. None of what I do is necessary. I've chosen to create a world free of hate, but even that isn't necessary. I chose this path. What I do is because I want to do it. I can't even say that doing stuff like that is necessary to create the world I want. But it works. It will work. People have had thousands of years to fix this up world. They had countless opportunities and they failed. If they couldn't do it before I was born, then they'll have to suffer the consequences. I'm going to do it my way. I won't look back. I won't regret. In fact, I will enjoy every second. I enjoyed killing Ino and her mother and seeing the look on her father's face. I enjoyed seeing his hate turn to regret. It was satisfying. One of the most satisfying things I've ever done. I plan to do it a lot more. So, I'm sorry if that upsets you. I tried to be clear about what I was from the beginning. Quote, Naruto looked gently at me. He was a monster. I could see that now. We both were. But, that's okay. I leaned up and stole a kiss from his lips. That's okay, Naruto. I told you I'd stay with you no matter what. I'll always be your empress. Maybe sometimes you can be a little kinder if I ask nicely. I proposed. Naruto smirked. Maybe if you asked really, really nicely. Naruto cooed while leaning down to suckle on my neck. I melted. Something is still bothering me. Sasuke spoke up to interrupt our affection. Naruto raised a brow while looking over to him. You said Hanabi and I needed to be cautious because they were going to attack us. But I realize now that they were no threat to any of us. They were weaklings. Did you know how weak they were? Sasuke questioned suspiciously. Yep. Naruto stated without hesitation. Hanabi frowned. Then, I lied. Sasuke and Hanabi went quiet. Sometimes lying is more convenient than dealing with the consequences of the truth. In my empire, the governments I create will not be able to lie to the people. They will have to be better than that. And if they do lie, I expect you to hold them accountable. Naruto lectured. Hanabi and Sasuke looked on attentively now. However, I have no such reservations about lying. Like I said, I'm doing things my way. I will lie, cheat, steal, murder, and do tons of other up things. I will do those things because I want to. I will be the living embodiment of what not to be. And after I die, those things die with me. Kyuubi will see to that. If anyone, no matter if they are a civilian, soldier, or politician, tries to do any of that, they will draw Kyuubi's hunger. Hanabi and Sasuke took a moment to contemplate Naruto's words. Do you really think Kyuubi can be trusted to shepherd the world after you die? Sasuke questioned. Naruto shrugged. I trust him enough. More than any human for damn sure. Well, except my empress. Naruto spoke sweetly towards me. I swooned. What happens when Kyuubi runs out of sinners to devour? Hanabi questioned. Then he'll rest. You really believe he'll just go to sleep and not take advantage of the power you've given him? You said before that when Kyuubi devours people his power increases. You are the only one strong enough to defeat Kyuubi. There may be others, but after so much time eating people, no one but you will be able to challenge him. After you die, what's to stop him from just taking over the world and farming people? Hanabi pressed further. Naruto didn't seem worried. Yay. I seriously doubt that will happen. Naruto said with a knowing grin. But how? Hanabi began. Enough. Naruto stated simply, silencing them. This day has been long enough. This is why I lie to you guys sometimes. It's so much easier. If you have a problem trusting me, then you don't have to follow me. Naruto warned. Sasuke and Hanabi immediately bowed their heads. Forgive us, Emperor. They chimed in unison. Naruto nodded. Much better. You should know me by now. Even when I lie to you, you should trust that I know what I'm doing. I don't expect you to believe everything I say or even believe in everything I do, but as long as you follow, you will have a decent life and get most everything that you want. Power, position, strength, etc. Sounds good, Naruto proposed. Sasuke and Hanabi exchanged glances before smirking at each other. Sounds good. Naruto refocused his attention back on me. He was really mesmerizing when he got like this. Now, where should we go for our vacation? I pondered his question. I've never seen the ocean. Naruto's grin brightened. Let's fix that. Today was hard, but with Naruto holding me, I felt like we could get through anything. As we traveled, he held me close. I forgot about Ino and her family. I forgot about their faces. I cared less and less with every moment within his grasp. How could I care about them when Naruto was looking at me, making my heart flutter? No one else mattered. Nothing else mattered. I can't wait to see what he has in store for us next. That's the end of the chapter. Thanks for reading. Please review. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed that. I missed last week's upload because I have been working on my own original story. Because of that, a lot of my creative energy is focused on the book I'm writing. So this will be the last update for this story for a while. Probably the next 2 months. I go on vacation from work early September, so I should be able to finish my book by then. So to give myself some motivation, I should pick this story up on September 20th, which is a Sunday. That should give me plenty of time to finish writing my book. I still have big plans for this story, so don't worry. I'm not abandoning it. This story right now should be around 55k words long, which is almost the length of a novel. So I hope this chapter tides you guys over for a while. Tell me what you think. Alright, see you guys in September. Stay healthy. All hail the ruler of the 5 great shinobi countries, Emperor Naruto Uzumaki, and his wife, Empress Hinata Uzumaki. Quote. As that announcement was made, a troop of masked shinobi walked in unison, forming 2 long lines. They stopped and turned to face each other synchronously. Naruto walked in the middle of them with his wife at his side. Naruto walked through the large hall with a cool swagger, a carefree smirk on his face. It's a lot warmer in here. I can't believe people actually live in a place so cold. Naruto swept some snow off of his fur collar. Hinata let out a tiny giggle. Maybe we can make some improvements, Naruto-kun. Naruto looked down at her with a bright grin. I plan on it. The couple strode forward, leaving their escort of shinobi behind as they walked towards the throne on the other end of the grand hall. An older man sat on the throne, adorned in a fanciful kimono and crown. While Naruto and Hinata left their troop of shinobi behind, only 4 shinobi followed them, their personal bodyguards led by a dark-haired man with pitch-black pupils. The one ruler of the Land of Iron, Shogun Itsumiki, welcomes Emperor Naruto and his empress, a man standing beside the shogun's throne announced. We weren't expecting such a royal visit, Emperor Naruto. Quote. Clearly not. You don't even know to bow before your emperor, Naruto stated in amusement. Naruto edged his head to the side, noting their formal demeanor. Our emperor. The shogun replied with a raise of his brow. Everyone's emperor. This declaration came from the black-haired man whose eyes shifted into red. Sasuke walked forward and glared harshly at the shogun. Please forgive my father, Emperor Naruto. Quote. A young woman sitting on a smaller throne at the shogun's side stood up and hurriedly walked down the stairs in front of the throne. Despite her youth, she had long, flowing white hair which matched the paleness of her skin. The fabric of her decorated white kimono dragged along the ground as she walked. She lifted the front slightly as she moved. Once she arrived at the bottom of the stairs, she immediately fell to her knees and bowed her head low, resting her forehead atop her hands. Princess Mizu, this is unbecoming. The man who stood next to the shogun frowned in disapproval of her actions. The princess ignored him. As you can see, Emperor Naruto, few here are truly aware of your greatness. If you will, we will execute my father's advisor for his incompetence. Princess Mizu, what is the meaning of? The man never finished his sentence as his head fell to the ground, followed by the rest of his body. Besides him appeared a man with bandages wrapped around his face. He kneeled in a low pose, holding a gigantic sword in one hand. A drop of blood fell from the edge. Consider it taken care of. I don't like wasting time. Quote. Naruto rested his hands behind his head while wearing a bright grin. How dare you attack the royal advisor? Samurai, prepare yourselves. A man adorned in heavy white samurai armor shouted while unsheathing 2 swords. Him and several other samurai guards stood below the shogun's throne, unsheathing their swords. Stop. Sheath your swords. The shogun finally spoke up, rising from his seat. But shogun, blood erupted from the man's mouth. He turned around to stare into intense Hyuga eyes. An eruption of chakra shot out from his back as the woman's palm collided with his chest. He fell to the ground, lifeless. There is no use in the empire for a dog that questions its master, the woman spoke heartlessly. Hinabi turned her back on the man before making her way back to Naruto. When she turned her back to the man, 2 guards charged towards Hinabi. Captain. They were able to take one step before suddenly grabbing their throats. Several needles pierced the skin, killing them instantly. A person standing next to Hinata in a white mask with red swirled design lowered their arm, having thrown those needles with deadly precision. Stand down. You will obey me. The shogun barked at his subjects. Everyone in the throne room suddenly kneeled upon his command. All except for Naruto's entourage. The shogun made his way down the stairs and kneeled next to his daughter, bowing his head towards the ground. Thank you, Emperor Naruto, for delivering swift justice. We welcome you and are ready to serve. The smile along Naruto's face slowly disappeared as he looked down at the shogun with a serious expression. That remains to be seen. Let's talk. A while later, Naruto and Hinata sat next to each other at the edge of a long table. The shogun sat on the opposite end. Next to him sat his daughter and several other important members of his council and military. Emperor Naruto, I want to formally apologize for the outburst that you witnessed earlier. I have only recently ascended to the throne in the last year, and as you can see, it will take some time before our country is back to order. I am embarrassed about what you saw today. The rebellion has really taken its toll on our people. Naruto gauged the man closely as he bowed his head. Tell me about this rebellion. It is a faction that stems from a group of people that have long been at odds with the throne's rule. The recent death of the previous shogun has only made them more bold. Naruto grew an annoyed expression. Have you read my doctrine? The shogun went wide-eyed. This is my first time hearing of such a thing. Quote. A long pause followed that confession. The silence was interrupted by an eruption of laughter. Naruto held his stomach and cackled madly. Really? Naruto questioned in astonishment. The person wearing a white and red mask walked forward next to Naruto. They took off their mask to reveal the mature and pretty face of Haku. In only 2 years, Emperor Naruto has conquered each of the 5 great shinobi countries almost single-handedly. He has brought them all under his singular rule. It is hard to believe that the ruler of a neighboring country as large as the Land of Iron has not read the Emperor's doctrine. In fact, you haven't even heard of it. It is an inconceivable incompetency. Quote. Haku spoke incredulously. Naruto, I would recommend that we start fresh here. Wait. All attention was drawn to the princess who suddenly bowed her head on the table and closed her eyes. Emperor Naruto, please understand. Fighting the rebels has been all-encompassing. Even my father being available to meet you was a hardship. He was on the front lines and he rushed back to the capital to prepare for your arrival. My father is a leader that fights with his soldiers on the battlefield. He is engrossed in the direct effort to protect our way of life. The responsibility of leadership was dropped on him suddenly with his brother's death. He is a warrior, not a politician. Please forgive his ignorance in this matter. The princess kept her head down as she spoke desperately, a tear trickling down her cheek. The shogun stared at her with a conflicted gaze. He then bowed his head as well. Naruto rubbed his chin thoughtfully. What do you think, Hinata-chan? You've been eerily silent. Naruto looked towards Hinata in interest. You know I always support your decisions, Naruto-kun. Quote. Naruto placed a finger under Hinata's chin, directing her to look up at him. Hinata's cheeks flushed red. You know I value highly the opinion of my empress. All eyes settled on Hinata. It was obvious that the fate of the shogun rested on her words. Hinata looked from the princess to the shogun. She could see the desperation in their gaze. Maybe we should give them some time to read the doctrine. The rebellion makes the integration of the country into the empire more complicated. After they read the doctrine and have an idea of what is expected of them, we can work with them to solve the rebellion and bring order more easily. Naruto listened attentively and nodded his head when she finished speaking. Before he removed his finger from her chin, Naruto engaged her in a passionate kiss, causing the shogun's people to look away. Naruto's entourage were unfazed by the display. Naruto pulled back after several long moments, licking up the string of saliva that connected their lips and leaving Hina panting. I like it. Naruto turned his attention to the shogun, a chipper smile plastered on his face. 3 days. That should give you enough time to read the doctrine and give us a report on the state of your country, the rebellion, and the path towards integration into the empire. We need to know every obstacle that will delay integration, and your suggestions on how to best handle those obstacles. Yes, Emperor Naruto. Thank you. The shogun kept his head bowed respectfully. Naruto narrowed his gaze. You're forgetting someone. The shogun went wide-eyed and turned his attention towards Hinata, bowing his head towards her as well. And thank you for your compassion, Empress Hinata. Quote. Yes, it seems the rumors about you are true, the princess spoke. Naruto frowned. You had time to listen to rumors about my empress but still didn't bother reading my doctrine. The shogun looked in panic from Naruto to his daughter. He was about to speak up, but she spoke first while lifting her head and wiping her tears away. She maintained a sweet smile. That is a fair assumption, Emperor Naruto. To be clear, I have read your doctrine, and I try my best to monitor the activities of you and your empire, including any and all related rumors. However, I am not my father's direct advisor. I am merely the princess, so I have not been in the position to directly inform him on these matters. Naruto rested his hand behind his head and stared up at the ceiling in thought. Well, it looks like the spot opened up recently. The princess bowed her head with a humble smile. That is not my decision to make, although I am humbled by your recommendation. Hinata quietly watched the interaction between the princess and Naruto. Welp, I'm beat. I assume you have some guest rooms. Yes, of course, Emperor Naruto. My guards can show you to the rooms we have prepared. The shogun gestured towards a man, who bowed obediently. Actually, father, I was hoping you would allow me to escort the emperor. I can even give him a proper tour of the premises, the princess spoke up hopefully. The shogun nodded in approval. Thank you, father. Quote. The princess rose and bowed towards Naruto. Please follow me. As Naruto moved, Hinata made sure to be at his side. Hinata noticed that the princess took Naruto's other side as she began to describe the different aspects of the shogun's villa. Hinata narrowed her gaze. I won't let anyone take my Naruto-kun. Hinata's eyes fluttered open when hearing the steady sound of movement nearby. The subtle sound was followed by periodic grunts. Hinata rolled over to see Naruto laying restfully on his side of the bed, wearing an amused smirk. Sasuke is still the loudest of the two. Hinata smiled sweetly. That's not hard to do when Haku barely makes any noise at all. Quote. Naruto nodded in agreement while staring up at the ceiling. True. Hinata moved over enough to lay her head atop Naruto's chest. They both listened contently to the noise coming from the next room. Naruto-kun, what do you think about the princess? Naruto raised a brow and looked down at Hinata curiously. What do you mean? Like, do you think she is pretty? Naruto sighed and closed his eyes, understanding Hinata fully. Of course I do. You know that without even having to ask. She is the young royal blood of a foreign kingdom. Women like that are almost always pretty. I know the thought of me finding other women pretty upsets you, and you know I refuse to lie to you, so why even ask? Quote. Hinata's face reddened when hearing his question. She bit into her bottom lip anxiously. I could just kill her, Naruto stated nonchalantly. Hinata's eyes widened, knowing that Naruto was completely serious. You don't have to go that far, Naruto-kun. Then maybe we could maim her to take away her beauty. Maybe tear out her teeth, chop off her nose. I bet she would be pretty unattractive without arms and legs. Quote. Hinata pouted. You are just teasing me now. Naruto sat up slowly and stared at Hinata with a sick grin. Am I? A shiver crept up Hinata's spine. She avoided his gaze and began drawing circles in his chest with a single finger. That won't solve anything, she stated gloomily. Naruto leaned his back against the headboard and shook his head. I know. You always get this way when we meet pretty women. Just the mere fact that I honestly acknowledge that other women are pretty, upsets you. I am a straight man, Hinata-chan. If you don't like the contents of a straight man's mind, then you don't have to keep asking about it. You are just torturing yourself unnecessarily. Hinata huffed and rose up, moving to the edge of the bed and putting on her slippers. Hinata-chan, Naruto said in exasperation. It's okay, Naruto-kun, I just need some air. I am sorry about being this way. I know it's silly and I only want to bring peace to you. I just really hate when pretty women are around you. She squeaked. Naruto chuckled and smirked. Wow. You know, if I didn't know any better I would say that you had a crush on her. If you wanted to make her your slave I wouldn't mind. It could be best to keep your enemy close. Quote. If possible, Hinata's face became even more red. I don't care how pretty she is, I only want you. Hinata said in a fluster. Naruto raised a brow. So you think she's pretty too? Honestly, I wasn't really paying much attention to her but you are making me want to take a second look. Quote. Hinata's eyes widened in horror. Naruto laid back down in bed with a carefree attitude, rolling over with a yawn. I still vote we should just kill her so you can stop thinking about it. Up to you, Hinata-chan. Quote. Hinata stared at Naruto's back for a long while, contemplating his words. She shook her head and stood up. She walked over to a GL door leading out to a terrace which overlooked the snowy city. She leaned on the balcony and stared off into the distance in deep contemplation. Maybe I should, she thought. Hinata twirled a finger through her hair and bit into her bottom lip nervously. Her mind was filled with the images of the princess seducing Naruto. Sudden movement snapped Hinata out of her thoughts. The steps were tentative. She could tell just by the sound that someone was trying to step quietly. Hinata activated her Byakugan and immediately noticed the shadowy visage of a young servant girl in the distance. The girl was pretending to work in the courtyard, but Hinata could see that the girl was constantly looking up to her. The girl walked through the snowy courtyard holding a bucket. She was walking in circles around the compound instead of going straight to her destination. She mumbled to herself, as if trying to talk herself into doing something crazy. You aren't a very efficient worker. The girl turned around and fell on her butt in surprise when hearing the unexpected voice behind her. Hinata stood in a regal stance, her Byakugan flared, staring down menacingly at the girl. I am sorry, Your Majesty. I mean, Your Highness. Empress. The girl sputtered. She crawled on her knees to pick up the items that fell out of the bucket. Hinata noted the fallen rope and a metal hook. This is quite pathetic for an assassination attempt. Hinata commented matter-of-factly while picking up the metal hook. I am not trying to kill anyone. The girl stated in alarm. Hinata stared intensely at the girl. She was young, probably still a teenager. Hinata could see that her chakra level was very low, and her muscles were underdeveloped. She was clearly malnourished. She wasn't a warrior. What's your name? Fiona, Your Highness. Fiona. It was a name Hinata had never heard before. It is a traditional name of my people. Your people are immigrants. Fiona shook her head. No, my family has lived here for generations. You would call us indigenous. Hinata nodded in understanding. Why are you sneaking around? Fiona squeezed the handle of the bucket she held. She paused for several long moments. Speak, Hinata demanded. I just wanted to talk to you, so please don't kill me. Fiona whispered in a frantic voice while bowing her head and closing her eyes in panic. Hinata was taken aback. Me or Naruto? Fiona avoided Hinata's gaze. I was hoping that maybe if I talked to you, you could talk to the Emperor. About the rebellion. I'm sure the Shogun has told you all about it. If he hasn't yet, then he will. You can't believe a word he says. Hinata frowned in confusion before her eyes widened. You're a rebel. Fiona noted the way Hinata took a more defensive posture. Yes, but we aren't what you think. The Shogun, the nobility, the people, they hate us. For good reason. We have a long and bloody history. They will try to paint us as villains, but we are just trying to follow our beliefs and live the way we think is best. We have many differences in beliefs and customs with the Shogun's people, so it has caused generational division, strife and war. Hinata listened patiently, looking over to the Shogun's villa. Our people lost the last war, now we are subjugated. He overtaxes us, restricts our ability to work and support ourselves. Most importantly, he has imposed extreme restrictions on our beliefs. If he could, he would wipe us all out. Many of us have resorted to theft and banditry just to provide for our families because he's burned our farms, our villa. Destroyed our sustainable way of life. Okay, I understand. Fiona was shaking, tears streaming down her cheeks. What do you want me to do about it? Just help us integrate peacefully into the Empire. I've read Emperor Naruto's doctrine. We all want it. It would respect our beliefs and our way of life. Under Emperor Naruto, we would have no reason to rebel. The Shogun knows this, so he is going to try everything he can to destroy us before the integration happens. The last thing he and his people want is for us all to coexist together peacefully. There is simply too much bad blood. Hinata was lost in thought as she listened to the girl's story. Why should I believe you? I am only hearing one side of the story. Fiona nodded and reached for something in her pocket. It was a dagger. Hinata narrowed her eyes. This dagger is sacred among my people. We only give this to those we trust. I want to give it to you. Hinata hesitated but eventually opened her palm and took the dagger. When the Shogun tells you his side, just ask him about the war, the reason why we rebel. Ask him why he thinks we resort to theft and rebellion as opposed to hard work. His answer will reveal all. Fiona bowed at the waist. Thank you for listening, Your Majesty. I only ask that you consider everything I have said. Fiona went wide-eyed when Hinata cupped her face gently. Thank you for the dagger. I promise that I won't forget this conversation. Now you should go before anyone finds out you are missing. Fiona smiled bright and wiped her tears away. Thank you, she stated simply before turning about and running away with her bucket. After Fiona faded from view, Hinata looked down at the dagger, and the intricate symbols carved into it. Somehow her jealousy was starting to seem petty to her. There were clearly much bigger things at stake. Wow, I didn't notice because of the blizzard, but your city is gorgeous. Hinata marveled at the view. From the height, she could see for miles. This is the highest point in the city. I wanted to bring you here to show you the splendor we have built. The shogun bowed toward Naruto and Hinata. Naruto walked past the man towards the edge of the tower they all stood on. He put his foot on the wall and looked over the edge. Naruto whistled cheerfully as he laid his eyes upon the vast snowy city. No joke. You've really built something special here. The shogun kept his bow. Not me, of course, but our family before us. We simply do what we can to maintain and respect our history. As Naruto enjoyed the view, Hinata's eyes settled on a particular section of the city in the distance. What part of your history is that place? Quote. The shogun followed her eyes to an area of the city whose architecture was notably shabbier than the rest. The shogun narrowed his gaze. I apologize for that eyesore. That is the Providence district. You might think of it as a slum. The occupants primarily belong to the Nazarene people. They are the group from which the rebels stem. Naruto perked up from that information. Are you saying that is the rebel home base? Quote. The shogun shook his head and moved forward to stand beside Naruto. From our intelligence, no. The rebels primarily take refuge in the outer villages. The shogun gestured far off in the distance, past the city gates. Our domain is primarily made up of villages, and our capital. Our capital is the center of commerce, but many residents of the country live in villages. The rebels stem from these villages. Naruto tapped a finger against his chin. Why not just burn the villages? Hinata froze when Naruto made that suggestion. A satisfied smile grew on the shogun's face. We have. Many in fact. But we have not been able to completely eradicate them. The Nazarene people represent a large portion of the total population of our country. Not all of them are combatants, even though they house rebels. We have done what we can, but you can imagine how difficult it is to face guerrilla warfare. Quote. These villages that you've burned. They are rebel encampments. Hinata finally spoke up. The shogun looked from Hinata to Naruto before clearing his throat. I mean no offense by saying this, but, have you ever faced guerrilla warfare? Quote. Hinata glared daggers at the man but didn't answer. He shook his head and turned his attention away. There is no such thing as a rebel encampment. They live among the people, blending in. We have good intelligence that lets us know the suspected location of key rebels, and we strike. I assure you that any unintended casualties are worth the important targets we take out. Hinata was forming a very clear picture of the war. Makes sense to me. It sounds pretty inefficient though. Maybe you should just burn them all and be done with it. Hinata's eyes widened in horror. The shogun looked surprised at the suggestion. Well, we have considered that but, Naruto pressed. But the logistics of such an act is prohibitive. We also have to consider the political fallout of such a cleansing. It may damage our support from our allies. Not to mention the resource cost. Naruto waved his hand dismissively. I can handle all that. I mean, they are just rebels. The shogun couldn't hide his excitement. Wait. Hinata spoke up suddenly. Naruto and the shogun looked at her curiously. Maybe it would be worth it to talk about why the rebels are rebelling. Maybe peace can be reached. Isn't that a better alternative than massacring an entire people? Hinata proposed. The shogun was trying his best to hide his disdain. There can be no peace with those people. Many of them are bandits, preying on our merchants. They steal and kill in an attempt to get their way. They attack our infrastructure, causing death and immense financial damage. They are a blight, plain and simple. Hinata didn't back down despite the man's harsh language. Why would they resort to being bandits when they have land to support themselves? The shogun finally turned away from Hinata, the man visibly annoyed. Who can understand the mind of a bandit? He doesn't care at all, Hinata thought. Hinata looked at Naruto with determination. I think we should take more time to understand the conflict. Maybe we can visit some of the villages, talk to the people. There may be a more peaceful solution. Naruto scratched his chin in thought. The shogun gritted his teeth in frustration before growing a small smile. I would support any decision you make, Emperor Naruto. If you want to go the route of negotiations, we can work on getting you in contact with their leadership. Know that our values are diametrically opposed, so there is virtually no agreement we could make that we would all agree on. Quote. Naruto frowned. Why do you say that? The shogun took a small book out of his inner kimono and presented it to Naruto. This is the core book of their beliefs. Their lifestyle is completely opposed to ours. If it was up to them, your empress would never have achieved the power she has. I even noticed some female soldiers among you, another thing which would be made impossible if they had their way. They restrict the freedoms of their women, stopping them from seeking higher education, careers, or joining the military. In addition, the men only seek lower CL work. They don't believe in investing or saving. They own a large amount of land but waste their resources on worship and sacrifices to their god. Their beliefs are so extreme that they can't afford to pay the fair taxes we give them, which is high. Many of them resort to banditry to make up the difference. Naruto took the book and scanned through a few of the pages. In short, they are an economic black hole with backwards beliefs. Beliefs that infect many of our young and spread like a plague. They anchor the growth of our great nation. If they had equal say to us, we would become a charity nation within the empire, sucking you dry. Hinata clenched her fists in frustration. I am sure burning their villages doesn't help them pay their taxes very well. And what happens when they can't pay? Hinata pointed out. Fair justice, the shogun stated simply. Naruto ruffled his own hair in frustration and closed the book. This is becoming more hassle than it's worth. I'll just burn the villages, and we can work on starting over, Naruto said in a nonchalant manner. No, Hinata suddenly blurted out. The shogun looked from Hinata to Naruto in amazement. Not only him, but several guards slightly turned their heads towards Hinata, before resuming their disciple. In posture. Naruto was stunned at Hinata's declaration. Hinata, realizing the situation, suddenly bowed her head and fidgeted. I just think they deserve a chance to prove themselves. It would be such a waste to just kill them all. They are not even all rebels. We would be killing countless innocents along with the rebels. Naruto rubbed the back of his neck and groaned. I am really over this drama. This is only one nation of many. I don't want to spend any more time here than I have to. We will give the villagers a few days to hand over the rebel leaders and gather their belongings. We can use the land they still have. We'll create a temporary camp to house them as we relocate them. The best thing to do with two groups of people with so much bad blood is just to separate them. Any of them that won't leave, will be burned along with their village. Naruto declared resolutely. The shogun bowed. A wise decision, Your Majesty. No, we can't just kick them out. They won't leave their ancestral homes. You're basically condemning them all to death. Please reconsider Naruto-kun, Hinata pleaded. Hinata moved towards Naruto and tugged gently on his shirt. Naruto narrowed his gaze at her. It's decided. I'm done explaining myself, Naruto warned. Hinata looked up at Naruto with a desperate, teary gaze, only to be met with a harsh and stern look from him. Hinata shook her head in despair before turning on her heels and sprinting away in tears. The shogun bowed respectfully. Please forgive me, Emperor. I did not mean for this matter to come between you and the Empress. Quote. Naruto waved his hand dismissively. Just be ready to move out on my command. Like I said, I don't want this issue to last longer than it needs to. As you command, Your Highness. Later, Hinata lay on her bed, her face buried in a pillow. She sniffled into the fabric while thinking about all the people who were essentially sentenced to death. I'm sorry, she thought bitterly. Hinata tensed when she heard her room door open. She knew who it was without ever having to look. There was a small table and chair on the opposite side of the bed. She listened in silence as footsteps moved towards the desk. She heard the person sit down. You embarrassed me today, Hinata-chan. Hinata trembled and forced herself to sit up. She looked over to Naruto and immediately froze. She couldn't remember the last time he looked at her with such a disappointed gaze. I'm sorry Naruto-kun, I just, really believe, she began. It doesn't matter what you believe. Naruto barked. Hinata nearly jumped out of her skin. You made a promise to follow me no matter what, and today you broke that promise. Deliberately contradicting me, arguing with me in front of others. You crossed the line. Naruto's voice was low and calm, yet Hinata could feel his words piercing her like a knife. She wrapped her arms around herself in a vulnerable manner. I'm sorry, Naruto-kun. Words aren't good enough, Naruto hissed. Hinata's entire body shook uncontrollably. She didn't know what to do. You will sleep in another bed until further notice. I want you to really think about what you did and reflect on your promise. Quote. Hinata's eyes widened in horror. Naruto-kun, that's too cruel. Please don't. Silence. Hinata bowed her head immediately, burying her forehead into the bed cushion. She couldn't help the stream of tears that poured from her eyes. Naruto rose from his seat and walked over until his imposing shadow cast over her. When she looked up, she saw Naruto's judgmental gaze bearing down upon her. Get out of my sight and only return when you are ready to give a true apology. Quote. Hinata rose up slowly and reached shaky hands towards Naruto's face, attempting to caress him. Naruto-kun, please don't do this. Hinata froze after Naruto pulled away from her attempted grasp. Don't touch me, Naruto hissed. Hinata looked up at Naruto in disbelief, her tears blurring her gaze. Silently, she crawled off the bed, her arms squeezing around her own body, her back hunched. She opened the bedroom door and began to close it behind her. She looked back one last time. Naruto had returned to his seat at the table and was writing something on a piece of paper. He was ignoring her. Hinata's heart sank. As soon as the door closed, the girl collapsed on her butt, burying her face in her hands and bawling uncontrollably. Far down the hall, behind a corner, was the regal white visage of the princess. She bit into her knuckle, a bright grin plastered across her rosy lips. She walked away, moving towards her room. She arrived at her chambers shortly and opened the door to see the shogun standing on the far side, looking out the window at the snowy city. Well, he questioned. It went far better than we could have possibly hoped for, father. The shogun couldn't hide his delight. Then tonight, the princess moved towards a large vanity mirror and settled down. She picked up a comb to begin grooming her silky, thigh-length white hair. That's far too bold. We should simply watch for a few days at least. I'll only get one chance. We are playing a very dangerous game. Quote. If it means wiping those vermin off the face of the earth, the risk is worth it. Do whatever is necessary to come between them and make sure he follows through with his plan. If they make up, she may convince him otherwise. Quote. You can trust me, father. I learned from the best. The shogun nodded and headed towards the door without another word. Don't disappoint me, he warned. Have I ever? She cooed sweetly. The shogun nodded in acknowledgement and left her alone. The princess looked at herself confidently in the mirror. Just a matter of time. Knock, knock, knock. Empress, dinner is ready. The voice spoke from the other side of the door. I'm not hungry. Quote. The bedroom door opened to reveal Sasuke holding a tray full of food. Sasuke didn't even bother asking for permission to enter. He knew they were close enough. Sasuke moved over to the nightstand to see the previous tray of food had gotten cold. He sighed and looked over to Hinata's gloomy visage. She sat in a chair looking out through the balcony window, at the snowy night sky. Hinata-chan, this won't solve anything, Sasuke pointed out. Now that they were in private, Sasuke spoke to her less formally. I know that. Sasuke replaced the old tray of food with the warmer version. If you explain what happened, maybe we can help you. You have friends for a reason. A single tear trickled down Hinata's eye. She still refused to look at him. She did her best to stifle her sniffles. Thank you, Sasuke-kun, but I have to handle this myself. I'm sorry if our behavior has made everyone uncomfortable the past few days. Sasuke shook his head and kneeled down next to Hinata. He took out a handkerchief to wipe her tears. She turned her head away in shame but otherwise didn't stop him. Sasuke watched her in frustration, the wheels turning in his head. He clenched his fist and nodded inwardly as he formed an idea. Sasuke placed a hand along her thigh, finally drawing her attention. You shouldn't be alone right now. How long has it been since you've been without company? Hinata looked down at Sasuke in confusion. What do you mean? Sasuke squeezed the girl's thigh gently, making her eyes go wide. For me, there is one thing that always helps clear my mind. As he ended that sentence, he raised up to move his lips closer to hers. Hinata gasped in shock. A few seconds later, a loud crash was heard through the villa. Samurai guards ran down the hall to see Sasuke's body sprawn out against the hallway wall. The man sat on his butt with his head hung low, a large hole in the wall behind him. Stand down. There is no cause for alarm. We will send a check for the damage. The guards turned around to see Hanabi striding forward confidently. They looked at each other and nodded before returning to their posts. Hanabi moved in front of Sasuke, crossing her arms and staring down at him incredulously. What did you do? Hinata questioned in annoyance. Sasuke raised his head, flashing an amused smirk. Hanabi noted the trail of blood leaking down the side of his lips. Hanabi shook her head with a smile and raised a hand to help him up. Sasuke took her hand and rose up without a struggle, dusting off his kimono. I figured anger is better than depression. At least for a little while. Hanabi sighed. I guess anything is better than her hanging around like a beaten dog constantly, but did you really have to go that far? Quote, understanding a woman's heart has never been his strength. Hanabi and Sasuke both turned their attention to an approaching, mature feminine figure. The dark eyes of Haku focused on the blood-staining Sasuke's chin. Haku stopped in front of Sasuke and began to wipe Sasuke's mouth with a sleeve. Sasuke wrapped both arms around Haku's waist, tugging their bodies closer. I never claimed to be perfect, Sasuke retorted. Hanabi stifled her laughter before focusing on the door which Hinata had slammed shut earlier. I probably wouldn't have much luck either. She's my sister, but I've never been good with feelings. Allow me. Sasuke was right about one thing. She has spent far too much time in isolation. Haku had almost finished cleaning Sasuke, rising up to deliver a lick to the remaining drop of blood on the side of his lip before turning around and placing a hand on Hinata's door. Haku stopped just before entering. Oh, and Sasuke-kun, if I catch you with anyone else, I will kill you both in your sleep. Haku maintained a sweet smile despite the threat. Sasuke smirked. I love you too. Quote. Later that night. Knock, knock, knock. Enter. Naruto looked up from his paperwork to see the princess standing in his bedroom doorway. I hope I am not disturbing you, Emperor Naruto. She bowed deep at the waist. I suppose I can make time for the princess, assuming you make your presence worth my time. While maintaining his seat at the desk, Naruto rested his cheek on his knuckles and watched her in mild interest. After closing the door behind her, Princess Mizu slowly strode forward to close the distance between them. I would never dream of wasting your time, Your Majesty. Naruto noted the graceful way she moved. It would be easy to tell that she was royalty just by watching her silhouette. She stopped in front of him, resting her hands gently against her pelvis. Despite Naruto's emphasis on time, Mizu allowed silence to linger between them, giving Naruto ample time to soak in her beauty, and he did just that. Her beauty was exceptional, a thing bards sung about, and poets wrote about. Naruto had only been in the city for a week and even he had heard the stories. Princess Miku, the Arctic Fox. A name she'd acquired from a very young age, likening her beauty to the majesty of a fox's pelt. Naruto's eyes scanned her unashamed. He noted her perfect, youthful figure, generous bust and hips, silky, flowing white hair, model-like face, and finally, the piercing gaze of her snow-white pupils. Naruto was so focused on the politics of the place before, that he honestly didn't pay much attention to her. Now that they were alone, he could see the truth. She was gorgeous and she knew it. No wonder Hinata-chan was freaking out, he thought. Are you going to tell me why you are here? Mizu grew an enchanting smile. I've come to serve, Your Majesty. Naruto chuckled in amusement. Serve, huh? You are bold. I guess it's pretty obvious that Hinata and I aren't sleeping in the same room anymore. I'm actually surprised it took you this long to make your move. Naruto suddenly rose up and quickly closed the distance between them, until their faces were inches apart. He swept a few strands of hair from her face. Strike while the iron is hot, right? To Naruto's surprise, Miku turned her head away, rejecting him in the most elegant way possible. The land of earth, lightning, water, wind, fire, and soon, the land of iron. These countries make up your empire. I assume you intend to continue expanding. Naruto was thrown off by her sudden tangent. He nodded silently, curious about the point she was trying to make. In that gigantic territory, there must be hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of women. I suspect you've seen countless beauties in your conquest. You have power, status, wealth, and this face. How many of them are ready to throw themselves at you? Mizu ran a tentative touch of her manicured fingers down Naruto's cheek. Being just another horse sounds boring. What I desire is far more interesting. Naruto raised a brow before turning around and returning to his chair by the desk. He let his gaze linger on her confident expression. I have to admit, you've surprised me. I hope that is a good thing, Your Majesty. That depends on what you say next. Mizu nodded and followed Naruto. When he sat down, Mizu kneeled down at his feet, bowing her head humbly. I said early that I came to serve, and I meant it. Emperor Naruto, I will try to be as straightforward as possible. I'm in awe of you. Something stirred in Naruto's pants when she suddenly looked up at him. Her cheeks were stained red. The infatuated look in her eyes was alarming. I've never met or heard of anyone like you. I've read all about your conquests, listened to all the songs, read every news article. I was there on the day you attacked the sand. You dominated them in a way I didn't think was possible. You are going to take over the world and no one can stop you. Of course Naruto knew this already, but he never tired of hearing it. She seemed to be the only person in the country who truly knew what he was. I also know how firm you are in delivering justice. You have no qualms with destroying entire family lines to bring people to heel. I heard what you did to the noble families of the mist. Naruto's eyes wandered in fond memory of the blood he spilled that day. I want to do everything I can to ensure my family has a future in your empire. I know you don't value bloodlines, you value competency. That is why I have dedicated my life recently to how myself and my future family can serve you best. That is why I knew of your doctrine. I have been doing my best to prepare for your arrival. Quote, so what do you want? Naruto spoke with a hint of impatience. Mizu knew that she would have to get down to specifics, and fast. I have 3 requests. First, I would like to be placed in a special advisory role of the doctrinal council you will establish. Quote, that request piqued his interest. An advisory rule? Very interesting. I assume you know that that position does not exist in my empire. She nodded with a determined look. Yes, Your Majesty. That is why I am asking you to create it specifically for me. Naruto scratched his chin in thought. Why not request a spot on the council directly? You would be more than qualified once it is established. Quote, Mizu shook her head. Because of the amount of power they wield, being the final say in the creation of new laws and the modification of existing laws, each member of the doctrinal council must take a vow of poverty. They must be pure and incorruptible. They forego a comfortable and lavish life to devote their lives to the fair interpretation and execution of your doctrine. Quite frankly, I don't want to be poor. I enjoy my lavish lifestyle. Quote, Naruto burst into laughter upon hearing her confession. You want the wealth of a princess, and the power and influence of a council member. Yes. Naruto found it cute how childishly excited she was at the idea. Secondly, I would like to ensure that at least one of my future sons gains a spot on the council, if they so desire. I will make sure to raise them with a deep knowledge of your doctrine, unwavering loyalty to you and your beliefs, and the morals to embody the virtue and character of a council member. Mizu continued. Naruto scratched his chin in thought. If your son is worthy, he won't need my help to attain that position. It never hurts to know someone important, Mizu hinted. Interesting, but only your sons. What if you have daughters? Mizu waved her hand dismissively. The life of poverty is no life for a lady. Such things are much better suited for men. My daughters will enjoy peaceful and comfortable lives, just like their mother. Quote, you seem rather sure of that. There is no guarantee that your father remains in power when we integrate the country into the empire. You must know that we redistribute the wealth of the population based on a very specific criteria. Royalty means nothing in my empire, except for me, of course. Do you plan on starting a wildly successful business, or marrying into wealth? Actually, that brings us to my last request. Before Naruto could point out the audacity of having 3 requests, Mizu rose up from her kneeling position. She bent over at the waist, placing her delicate hands along Naruto's thighs and peering at him with a haughty gaze. Who better to sit on the doctrinal council than one of the sons of the great Emperor Naruto himself? As for his mother, I trust that the Emperor would take very good care of her. Naruto went wide-eyed. I underestimate her. I hope these requests have made me a tad more interesting than a common whore, Mizu cooed. She leaned down to kiss the growing bulge hidden in Naruto's pants. I've got to admit, I'm impressed. A bright grin grew along Naruto's face. He leaned down to whisper into Mizu's ear. The closeness made her shiver. How about this? If you survive with all your limbs intact, I'll consider it. A look of confusion and panic grew along Mizu's face. Did I offend you, Your Highness? Naruto shook his head. Not me. Naruto sat up straight, looking past Mizu. Good evening, Hinata-chan. Mizu's heart sank. She slowly turned her head to the side to look in terror at the hellish visage of the Empress, standing in the doorway with her Byakugan flared. Naruto looked down at Mizu in amusement. Good luck.